Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to another Cypher video. This time we're doing another tier list specifically over 2000's Nickelodeon shows. So you can see we have a pretty good mix of animated and live action. So yeah, I kind of got to go over the rules. So I'm not going to go over any kids shows like Max and Ruby or Dora the Explorer just because it's a different subject matter and it's kind of weird having them on the same list as, you know, Avatar and Danny Phantom and Back in the Barnyard and, you know, everything else on here. I don't think it really fits. I was kind of debating whether I should even do a mix of live action and animated, but I figured, whatever. I don't want to make two separate videos, and I'm not going to make a video on kids, like toddler shows, preschool programs, if you will, just because why would I? The only other rule I have is the show had to spend a decent amount of time in the 2000s, or at least a majority of the time. So you're going to see the exception of Rugrats here. It spent its last 4 seasons in the 2000s, but I mean, it spent a majority of the time that it was on air in the 90s, because it started in 91 and then ended in 2004. So it's kind of iffy having it on this list, but I figured it's prominent enough, and you know, that's probably something that people are looking for when they're going to a 2000s list, even though it was primarily a 90s show. And then Hey Arnold spent about half its time in the 2000s and half its time in the 90s. It went from 96 to 2004, so I'm skipping over Penguins of Madagascar because they went from 2008 to 2015. You violated the law. So it's kind of on the tail end, but it spent most of its time in the 2010s. Basically, the last show from the 2000s in terms of animation that I have on here is The Mighty Bee. So anything after that is a no-go. Another couple exclusions people might be questioning are Kenan and Kel and Cousin Skeeter. Those ones only spent about a year in the 2000s and spent a large amount of time in the 90s, or at least the majority of the time that the show was running for. So I figured it wasn't really something that I would want to put in here. So I'm skipping over 100 Deeds for Eddie McDowd. It's a dog show, I think. The Brothers Garcia, No One Knows Best, Tina, and then Romeo. They're all shows that I know next to nothing about, and I couldn't really find any high quality stuff on the internet, especially for Romeo and Tina and No One Knows Best. No One Knows Best I saw one clip of. It's the Hanson clip.
Stay as long as you want here.
Oh, thanks. It's a great place. You guys got a great place? All right, we gotta be very, very cool. Make them feel completely at home. If they leave here, we're never gonna see them again.
It was really bad. If No One Knows Best was on this tier list, it'd be F tier, just FYI. Everything else, though, I'm just gonna avoid because I don't really know that much about. And again, Kenan and Kel are not going to be on this list because they weren't in the 2000s that much. Cousin Skeeter as well. Now that we got that out of the way, let's start with the shows. First up, we got Danny Phantom. Danny Phantom is a pretty good show. It's probably one of my most subconsciously influential shows. It was definitely one of my favorite shows of the time, and I still know the theme song word for word. So I'm going to put Danny Phantom in the S tier. It's a really good show, and let's be honest, we all had a crush on Sam. So with that out of the way, let's move on to Rugrats.
Go to fucking hell, Philip!
I think Rugrats is an alright show. Especially the seasons that were actually in the 2000s. Now, granted, I am judging it as a whole. I think Rugrats is, you know, probably one of the most influential Nickelodeon shows, as well as just like one of the most well-known and beloved. I think it's going to be a B tier for me. Like, it's pretty well written and it's animated very well, but I don't know, there's just really nothing pulling me there. It wasn't one of my favorite shows as a kid. It was a show that I watched a lot, but I would much rather watch something else, I guess. Yeah, it's alright. You know what? I'll put it up in A tier, but this is going to follow the same rules that the last tier list followed, where I'm going to organize them within their own tiers. So this is probably going to be towards the end of A tier. Now, Drake and Josh, I think most people would agree Drake and Josh is by far, or you know, definitely the best Nickelodeon live action show or sitcom or whatever you want to call it. I don't really think there's much of an argument aside from maybe iCarly, or, well, if you're talking 2000 sitcoms, iCarly. Maybe you'll get some people who like Zoe 101 more. Probably will. And then Ned's Declassified probably has some backers as well. But I think Drake and Josh is definitely an S tier. Just really well written. And the show covers a lot of ground with its characters. It's kind of crazy watching the growth of the characters throughout that show. It's pretty cool, actually. I think they got something really special with Drake and Josh. It is, unfortunately, you know, I don't think you really see it that much in the show, but it's kind of plagued by the Dan Schneider grossness. Dan Schneider's just a fucking sicko, so.
I've read about prison, and it ain't fun.
it doesn't really taint the actual shows, in my opinion. It's just kind of an afterthought. It's like, man, that sucks that that show had to be associated with that, you know? Up next, we got the Wild Thornberrys. Now, I don't really remember much about the show in general. I think the premise is kind of, maybe not dumb, but sort of overdone. I do like Nigel. Nigel's, you know, obviously the source of a lot of memes. And it's kind of an interesting argument to argue whether or not a show should be responsible for its memes, or like responsible for the meme culture surrounding it, like if it should take credit for that or not. You know, it is the creativeness of the people creating the memes, not the creativeness of the show creators. But I think it's kind of like the groundwork, it's the foundation that the meme creators build their memes on. So I think there is a bit of responsibility that a show can have for its memes. So with that, I think Wild Thornberrys is a C tier. It's just kind of average. The premise is average. From what I remember, they don't do that much with it. Other things with similar premises haven't done already. So, and Mr. Meaty, I think we're just gonna plop this down here in the F tier and forget about it. Now, all jokes aside, I think Mr. Meaty is a really bad show. I watched some shorts for it, just in preparation for the video, and they were all pretty bad. There's something to be said for gross humor, or gross out humor, whichever you want to say, and it's not necessarily a bad form of humor at all. There's many things that can do gross humor well, but I think Mr. Meaty fails spectacularly. It's like being gross for the sake of being gross, which is never really a good thing in my opinion. Just kind of, if done well, gross out humor can be good, but Mr. Meaty does not meet that mark at all. So up next we got Naked Brothers Band. It is probably an E tier. I watched the music video for their theme song for this video, and it's really bad. It kind of triggered some memories. It was like, ooh, yeah, that show. I think Naked Brothers Band is like one of those shows that some people remember, and they're like, wait, that was real, you know? That wasn't just a dream that I had one time. I definitely remember a lot of promo stuff for this and watching a couple episodes, but I think overall it's pretty yuck. If this was just like a theme song tier list, this would be F tier for sure, because it's pretty awful. It's pretty god awful. Now up next we got Just Jordan, which does also have a pretty bad theme song. It's not even like well, it's not my type of music type deal. It's just like genuinely bad. It's really poorly written, I think, in my opinion. But I think Just Jordan's a D tier. I couldn't really find that much stuff about the show, and I didn't watch it at all when it was airing, I don't think I ever caught a single episode of this show. If you're curious, if you are like me and you've never really heard of it, I think 2007 to 2008 is when it ran. So that's probably the time where I stopped watching Nickelodeon for a little bit. I'm trying to think of what was going on in my life at that time. Yeah, that was probably like in the middle of my parents' divorce, so I think I maybe saw one or two promos for it, but not much else. But I mean, from what I've seen, it's kind of it only ran for a single year, so couldn't have been that good, I guess. I mean, that's not really the best way to judge a show, is because lots of good shows get canceled early. From what I've seen, plus that fact, it's not very good at all. And up next we got Invader Zim. Invader Zim is very good, and I think this is a show that's largely responsible, or at least partially responsible, for my interest in weird stuff. So I'm a pretty bizarre person. I think that comes from shows like Invader Zim, I'm gonna put it in A tier. There's nothing really sticking out to me that pushes it to S tier, and sometimes the show can be a little annoying. It's not, bad by any means, but it's not an S tier, I don't think. Up next we got As Told by Ginger. As Told by Ginger is probably gonna be a D tier. It's from the creators of Rugrats, and you can really tell with the voice acting, which is, something that I find a little distracting sometimes. It depends on the context, but there's certain characters I didn't even know that the show was produced by the same people or directed. I don't remember. It has some similar people working on these two projects, but I heard the voice, I think it was Phil.
Where are the tonsils you boys promised?
And it was just like, whoa, was this produced by the same people as Rugrats? And I looked it up, and sure enough, it was. So yeah, I mean, there's not really much to say about it. It's kind of just like I'd say poorly written and jumbled show. It's really fast-paced, and not fast-paced even, just kind of like what's going on and why. There's no reason for it, and that's kind of interesting compared to my next selection here, which is Cat Scratch, which I'm going to put in A tier. If you've never heard of it, I wouldn't blame you. It didn't run for too long, but I mean, I watched the show a lot when I was younger. It's pretty good. This is something not really in the same vein, but has, sort of the same, not issue, but talking point, where things are going on and it's crazy and you're like, why is this happening? But Cat Scratch is kind of like, it sets it up, and it's like a surreal why is this happening, whereas this is a realistic why is this happening, This is set in reality for the most part, whereas this is sort of fantastical, and it's a lot easier to accept something that's fantastical, that is kind of going crazy off the walls. It's like a regular show almost, where it's kind of just escalating. Well, regular show is more kind of exploding in the last 5 minutes, whereas this is a gradual increase, I think. But As Told by Ginger is kind of just like, why are these characters doing this? Why did they write that line of dialogue, you know? Like asking a question, saying, hey, what are you up to? And then cutting to a different scene.
The boys are missing and the girls are about to start the next world war. What are you up to?
Like, why did you ask that question? Or why did you ask it and not have the character answer it? It's really stupid. The character design is kind of gross too. Now we have Rocket Power. Rocket Power is going to be an E tier. It's kind of an obnoxious show. I'm going to resize it real quick because I don't like that. It's kind of obnoxious. I don't think anyone really likes this show that much, but I don't know, there's nothing really to say about it. Nothing stands out really to me. It's kind of just a forgettable show that is also annoying when you watch it. So it's probably forgettable because everyone's just trying to flush it out of their memory. So up next we have iCarly. I think it's close to an S tier, but I do think it's kind of, I don't know if I was just too old when it was airing, but it's kind of just like, we're screaming now, and it's a little obnoxious at times, but the show's pretty good overall, aside from that one point. I don't think there's really any major negatives to this show, aside from them screaming and, oh, LOL, so random, and, you know, the Dan Schneider thing, but iCarly's it's a pretty good show. There's not much to say about it, aside from, like, probably it's cultural influence. A lot of cultural influence, I would say. So that's something that you could mark down as a positive. Up next, we got Avatar. Avatar is definitely just period one of the best shows I've ever watched. It's really concise. It knows what it's doing. There isn't really much any wasted time at all. It doesn't try to bog itself down with stupid humor. It has humor, but it's, you know, deserved and makes sense, and it doesn't slow the show down much at all, and it's kind of more dry humor, which I appreciate personally. Avatar is definitely one of the best. It's very influential to me personally, and just sort of like the stuff that I enjoy. It's a very, very good show. If you haven't watched Avatar, go watch Avatar. It's that good that I'm recommending it. I don't normally recommend shows, but watch Avatar, please, for the love of God. Up next, we got Chalk Zone. Now, Chalk Zone is a really creative show. I mean, it kind of has like a Narnia vibe, I guess. I don't know. It's a very good original show that is kind of forgettable. There's not really much to say about it, I don't think. I don't know very many people talking about Chalk Zone, you know? I think it's going to be a B tier. I think it's really close to an A tier, though. It was one of my favorite shows growing up. Just in general, I loved every time they were in the Chalk Zone, I was glued to the TV, you know? Up next, we got Jimmy Neutron. Man, this is a toughie. I think Jimmy Neutron is an A tier. I'm debating whether or not it should be A or B, but I think A is pretty appropriate considering just like the impact it's had on me personally. The animation's pretty good, but it's kind of like, what was Jimmy Neutron about, you know? That's typically what I go to. To me, Jimmy Neutron sort of lacks the episode to episode pull, you know? Like, most episodes feel like they're pretty similar to other episodes in my memory banks, at least. It's not that it was bad, it was just kind of maybe drawn out is an inappropriate word. Up next we have The X's, which is another short-lived show. It's pretty bad. I watched a few episodes of it, and I don't know, it's kind of just generic and doesn't really know what it's doing, in my opinion. I watched a few episodes when I was younger, and I watched as much as I could for, you know, what I could find online, and just in general it just seemed confused as to what it was, and it seemed like the writer may as well have written all the characters to say, well, what are we doing right now and why are we doing it? Just kind of stupid. Up next we got Unfabulous. Unfabulous is, I'd say, more of a forgotten show, but it is decent. It's not really my type of thing. The theme song sticks with me a lot. I don't know why, but I occasionally it pops into my brain, and all of a sudden I have the Unfabulous theme song stuck in my head. Also, I have a crush on Emma Roberts, so that kind of pulls me one way or the other. Emma Roberts, if you're watching this, and you want to take me to prom, it's in my living room on the 21st of March. So hit me up. Just let me know if you want to go to prom with me. It's pretty cool. I don't really remember much about the show, but I'm giving it a B tier just because I have a crush on Emma Roberts. You should be flattered, Emma. Up next, we got My Life as a Teenage Robot. It's kind of like what is it like? I don't know. It has stuck with me a lot. XJ9 is probably one of my favorite characters, and it's really interesting how it deals with the fact that XJ9 is not a real girl and sort of picking apart that trope. The writing's pretty good. I think I'm going to put this one in S tier. A tier. I think it's just a pretty good show. There's not really any flaw that I can pick out in my brain off the top of my head. I'm gonna resize some of these because I feel like I have some more A tiers coming up. I'm gonna jam them in real close. Cat Scratch, get over here. It's just we had too many. I mean, we have a lot of stuff in A tier in general, but too many of these long landscape type logos or whatever, you know. I think this is appropriate. All right, there we go. Up next we got All Grown Up, which is the complete trash version of Rugrats. It should probably have never existed, but it did, so because it existed, I'm gonna put it in E tier. It's just kind of stupid and should have never been made, so that's all I have to say about that. Back in the Barnyard is also a show that should have never been made. It was based off a movie, right? If I'm remembering right, it was the movie first and the show. For some reason, someone thought it was a good idea to make it. There's nothing to say about it other than it's absolute garbage. I mean, it has some good memes that came from it. Hey Arnold is another really great show that a lot of people absolutely love. I think it's probably one of the best written shows in terms of just like plot, characters, setting, and all that. Kind of just feels natural. Everything that happens for a reason, pretty much. I think it's going to be an A tier. Really packing them in tight here. Zoe 101. It's an interesting show. Kind of feels cheap, sort of on the same level as House of Anubis and like H2O, those shows. I don't know. It's kind of just meh, in my opinion. I used to like it a lot, but as time has gone on, I've been like, why did I enjoy that show at all? Chase is kind of annoying. I always rooted for him to get with Zoe, but even still, I think the reason I liked it as a young kid is because it had pretty girls in it. That's my excuse for enjoying it as a kid. I think it's going to be a B tier. It's going to be a lower B tier once I organize them, but it's just an alright show that sort of doesn't really feel like people are acting, especially in the earlier seasons. It kind of just feels like, hey, there's a camera, say these lines, you know? At least in my opinion. Oops, I did it again. Up next we got The Mighty B, and it's not going to go in B tier, I can tell you that. The Mighty B is a pretty trash show. It has one of the best theme songs, though. I really like the theme song. But I'm going to put it in D tier. Just because I think it's really annoying. The main character is really annoying. It's like one of those characters that is rude to everyone around her, and I don't think that's very fun to watch, in my opinion. Same thing for like, not necessarily rude for this situation or the example I'm about to bring up, but sort of just ignorant. In the Steven Universe example, I've talked about this a decent amount with one of my employees at work, is that Steven Universe is a really selfish character, and he's not really reprimanded for it. There's no consequences for his selfishness or any tangible consequences. It's kind of just like slap on the wrist stuff. And I don't even remember B having any of that slap on the wrist stuff. So, I mean, aside from the theme song and maybe a couple of the characters being enjoyable, there isn't really much positive. You know, I'm gonna put you down in E tier. Fuck you, Mighty B. God damn it. Alright, up next we got True Jackson VP. Now, the first thing I want to point out is who the fuck chose the logo or the font for this logo, because it's pretty fucking basic and it kind of pisses me off. I'm not really like a font gatekeeper. I kind of think that's obnoxious, but for a logo, this is really plain and boring. So, but True Jackson VP is a show that I didn't watch that much personally, mostly because the subject matter is more of a fashion-based show, if I remember correctly, and I'm not really into fashion stuff, so kind of just isn't really up my alley. But I did watch a decent amount of it when I was younger, and I think that fact that you can say, well, it wasn't really something that I was interested in, but it was interesting enough as a show to make me watch it a little bit, so I'm gonna put it in C tier, just kind of in the middle there. It does kind of follow that annoying trend where the lead actress sings the theme song, I think. Let me look that up. Yeah, it is sung by Keke Palmer. I think it's annoying when shows do that, but whatever. Now up next we got The Amanda Show, and speaking of theme songs, this theme song was produced by, or, you know, composed by Stuart Copeland, who did the music for the Spyro games, which is a little fun fact for you. It's a pretty good theme song. The song was also reused in Spyro for the Wizard Peak level in the first game. And in terms of a skit show aimed towards young adults and teenagers, I think Amanda Show is serviceable. I think a lot of people remember it more fondly than they would if they watched it today, you know? I think it's sort of just like a nostalgia thing, but I'm gonna put Amanda Show in B tier. It's not really bad, it's just kind of not as good as I remember it, personally. Now up next we got SpongeBob, and I think SpongeBob's a tough one because you have the first 3 or 4 seasons in the movie, and then you have decent episodes and good episodes sprinkled throughout the rest of the seasons, but you have a lot of bad episodes, in my opinion. I think the show really drops in quality. In the beginning it was great, and now it's kind of just good. As I was talking about earlier with the Wild Thornberrys, I think the show is sort of responsible for a lot of the meme culture that surrounds it, which is I think, a really good thing. So, I mean, if it didn't have all the memes, I would put it in B tier, but I'm going to put SpongeBob in A tier, just because, well, if it stopped at like season 4 or 5, I'd probably put it in S tier, but it's kind of just like a cultural powerhouse. You can't really ignore. It's everywhere. SpongeBob is Nickelodeon's mainstay. SpongeBob is Nickelodeon, you know? I think because of its prevalence and because of its good head start and the sprinkling, and honestly the rebound that it's had more recently, it's been, I think, a little bit of a better show. Just and the cultural prevalence, the memes it's had spawn from its existence is all enough to keep it in A tier rather than bump it down to B tier. But the negatives sort of keep it from being an S tier in my opinion. I love SpongeBob, by the way. I absolutely love SpongeBob, but in my heart, I feel like I can't really justify an S tier for it. Right, so next we got Fairly Odd Parents, and I think Fairly Odd Parents is a really, really similar thing where it's kind of just a show that started out really good and then just tanked, or not tanked, but took a nosedive. I'm going to put it in B tier just because it really did start off pretty strong. They just kept it going for too long in my opinion. They should have cut it after like season 6 or something like that. I don't really remember when Poof came around or when the dog came around, but should not have gotten to that point in my opinion. But Channel Surfers is one of the best specials for a TV show ever, so I'm just saying. Then we got Wayside, probably another more forgotten one. I think the show was alright. I don't think it really compares to the books that it was based on. There isn't really much to say about it though, so I think I'm just gonna stick it in C tier and forget about it like everyone else has. Up next we got Just for Kicks. I watched a little bit of this show. Someone uploaded several episodes into a single video. It's pretty bad, pretty poorly written. I watched like half of an episode. To be fair, you should probably watch more to get an accurate judgment, but based on how bad that first episode was, there's no way it could have gone up past D tier in my opinion. So I'm going to stick it down in E tier just because that's where it deserves to be. Now up next we got Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide. And I think this is another one of those shows that sort of has an underground cultural prevalence. It's kind of understated how much cultural prevalence this show has had. Maybe it's more niche. Maybe it's just kind of cultish, like a cult following, you know? But I think it's a really good show. The writing in general is really good. The pace of the show is really good too. It's something I haven't really touched on for many of these shows. Like for Zoe 101, the pace is pretty god awful. Sometimes the shows just drag on and it's really slow and it's like, fuck, just get to the end already, goddamn. But I think Ned's Declassified doesn't have that issue at all for a majority of its episodes. So I'm gonna put Ned's Declassified in S tier. I think it's definitely one of the better shows that Nickelodeon has put out. Oh, and what's this? Oh god. Oh no. I thought I'd gotten rid of you. I thought everyone had forgotten. No! Get him out. Someone get him out. It's fucking Tack. I had to look over at my other monitor because I forgot his name because he's that awful. Fuck you. You get your own tier. You get... Hold on. Absolute garbage. That's where you belong. The trash can. The show just looks awful. It was poorly written. It's just overall nothing redeemable about it. It's worse than Mr. Meaty and Back in the Barnyard and everything on this list. All the negatives in all these shows, if you piled them all into one show, this show would still be worse. This talk, whatever the fuck. Get this shit out of here. Erase it from my memory because it's absolute filth. It is disgusting. Fuck this show. That's gonna round up my list. I do want to mention real quick, we have a couple shows that sort of teetered on the end of the 2000s, like Big Time Rush. Not gonna talk about Big Time Rush because it spent a majority of its time in the 2010s. So pretty much True Jackson VP is the cutoff for the latest show in terms of live action. So there you go. There's my 2000s Nickelodeon shows tier list. I think it's a bit more mainstream. There are maybe a few that, you know, true fans would disagree on, like maybe some fans of As Told by Ginger or some diehard fans of Fairly Odd Parents might disagree with my placement of those shows. Oh well, that's what this video is supposed to be about. They're supposed to disagree. If everyone had the same tier list, what would be the point of making a tier list, you know? This is me putting my opinion out there, and I want to hear yours. So if you differ from me, leave it down in the comments. Any variations, anything you would change, or if you want to do a full tier list, go ahead, be my guest. Just don't waste your fucking time with that shit. Just do it real quick. So that'll be everything. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Later.